do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
Well, a stadium bulb appears to have been turned on in the tunnel to light the way forward for transport operators and the government to walk together and leave behind them the darkness which prompted some bus and taxi operators to withdraw their services on Monday to the detriment of the commuting public. So what now? What did the parties agree on at that crucial stakeholders meeting on Tuesday, and how do those points of agreement, what do they mean for the Road Traffic Act designed to punish severely those who would drive like hogs on the nation's roadways? That's the issue for discussion and lead story today. Let's go. So the issue that has consumed us since about Sunday, when a voice note from the Minister in charge of Transport, Daryl Vaz, started making the rounds, appealing to transport operators to let good sense prevail, abandon plans to protest across the island. He said that there was a meeting set for Tuesday to discuss contentious issues where the regulations attendant to the Road Traffic Act were concerned. Well, of course, we all know now that his plea was ignored. The plea of the leaders in the transport sectors of various taxi and bus groups. Their leaders also asked members in the main to hold trains. Train was not held, and so there was disruption on Monday. Fast forward to Tuesday morning, there was a meeting of stakeholders, and the stakeholders have said that coming out of that meeting, there are broad points of agreement. The minister is expected to now do some consideration of the recommendations made to him to inform what the new regulations will look like where the Road Traffic Act is concerned. So today, to get the very latest, I've invited the Managing Director of the Transport Authority, Ralston Smith, and a representative head for one of the taxi groups, Lorraine Oscar Finnegan, for his perspective. He's the president of the All Voice Transportation Group. Gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to CVM TV.
Good evening to you, Judge.
Finnegan, are you there?
I'm here.
Good to have you here, sir. We heard from the Transport Minister, Daryl Vaz, earlier today, sounding rather upbeat about the situation concerning the sector at this point. He says that he is satisfied that there will be no more disruptive action, at least in the short term, as he considers the set of recommendations made to him. First of all, Ralston Smith, I want to ask you, today's meeting, I wanted to give up the public an idea of the mood of the meeting and how wide-ranging were the discussions held today.
Thank you. Well, I'm pleased to report that the mood was quite amicable. The discussions were wide-ranging. We examined a list of offences under the Road Traffic Act and its supporting regulation. We looked at the fines, the penalties, and of course the demerit points, which was of course one of the contentious points for the public transport operators.
Mm-hmm. Why has it taken so long, and on the back of protest action by some bus and taxi operators, to streamline a set of regulations which anybody reading it would have seen that there were anomalies that needed to be ironed out?
May I say, on the face of it, it may appear to be a knee-jerk reaction to the protest action by the public passenger transport operators, but that is not so. In fact, a meeting was held last Wednesday at the Harbour Tree Transportation Centre right here in Kingston. And the steering committee members were invited to be part of it, as well as other members of the operating public. They did come, and they did put before the Transport Authority some issues and concerns in writing. And we did escalate those issues and concerns to the attention of the Minister. And the Minister, the Honourable Daryl Vaz, did instruct and direct that a meeting be convened with the steering committee, the head of the Island Traffic Authority, of course, Colonel Daniel Price, the head of PSTEP, ACP Gary Mackenzie himself, the Transport Authority, and of course the operators. So that meeting was pre-planned for today, and today was not an account of the protest action by the public passenger transport operators. So just to say that the Minister himself is sufficiently seized of the issues as they permeate the public passenger transport space. The Transport Authority, having been brought into the loop of the things, we sought to engage the operators themselves. So all these events were pre-planned just before the demonstration. I want to make it abundantly clear that I believe there is some semblance of miscommunication, misconception, and misrepresentation of the facts as they were that would have accounted for the protest action yesterday. Regrettably, and as you have heard, the minister stated on many different forums, nobody benefited at the end of the day. And the minister's approach is 3 C's: communication, consensus, and of course, collaboration. So we want to ensure that we engage the stakeholders and that we can come to common ground on certain issues and points affecting their overall operations.
Lorraine Oscar Finnegan, what from today's meeting leaves you feeling satisfied about the immediate future for yourself and others like you who are in this taxi business?
Before I go directly to the question you had, I want to use this opportunity on behalf of the sector to thank the minister and the head of Island Traffic Authority, the head of the Transport Authority, the chairman and the MD, and JCF for not only planning this meeting at such swift and appropriate time, but also to have us from the sector involved in it. It is a commendable effort that was made by the agencies and the minister. And the reason why I say that is that in the past, we would have heard announcement on the radio that would have come in from decision made by cabinet. For the second time since the appointment of this minister, we in the sector have been able to sit at the table to participate in major discussion that would have normally been done at the cabinet level. And the first one was the preparation for the submission for the fare increase last year. And then this major one, the revision of the Road Traffic Act. I must also join with the MD in saying that the meeting today was not because of the strike yesterday. This meeting was planned from as way back as last week, Wednesday. So to the question you directly have, it was a productive meeting. I must tell you that the members from the sector that were present today, we were on the compound speaking a lot about what took place at the meeting, how happy we were, how we felt relaxed, comfortable, with a sense of assurance coming out of that meeting and going back to our members. In fact, somewhere within the first hour and a half of the meeting, my members were texting, asking if they should continue the strike, and I responded by telling them they can go back to work, especially some operators from in Spanish Town, Bagwell, and Linstead. So it was a productive meeting, and it made us feel good in the sector that we didn't sit and wait on the radio or the television or the newspaper to see what comes out of the meeting. We're fully involved, we fully participate, and we are very glad and happy for the recommendations that were made. And now we wait patiently for the response from the minister.
All right, so the public isn't here to ask both you gentlemen questions, so I'll be the bad guy. I note a release from the Transport Authority today saying, in the 4th paragraph, I read, one outstanding issue remains and will be dealt with at another meeting to be convened at another date. What is that one outstanding issue, Lorraine Finnegan?
All right, we tried to raise in the meeting today the matter of those operators that would have reached the threshold of accumulation of demerit points, which is 10. And so we wanted to discuss what would be the plan or the recommendation from us to the minister as it relates to those licenses that reach 10 or more demerit points.
And what is your recommendation to treat with those drivers?
Well, it was not discussed.
No, so I'm asking you today, I'm asking you now, what would you recommend that the government does about men or women, public transport operators who have 10 or more points against their license?
That is a matter that I'll have to discuss with one, my members, and two, with the steering committee before I could give a recommendation as it relates to it.
So even if that matter was entertained at today's meeting, you did not go in with a defined position representative of what your members feel should be the course of action to take for drivers with 10 or more demerit points.
No, I didn't go into the meeting with that on my mind. It was when it was raised by another member.
Yes.
I saw the importance of it.
All right. From a personal perspective, may I ask you, would you want that there to be an amnesty then for those who have accumulated these number of points to have their slate wiped clean and start again?
I'll answer two ways. One is I would love for the slate to be wiped clean, but it might be a bit technical to be done in the sense that I would rather that such idea be made on a per person basis. Each matter is treated on its own merit. For instance, I would like to see a driver returning in the sector to drive with a habit of running stoplights, breaking stop signs, speeding, reckless, careless, and dangerous driving. I would like to see a driver like that back in the sector. So for it to be reprieve on a wholesale basis, we could just be having some of those terrible drivers that I've just mentioned, some offenses back in the system.
So let me get you clearly, Lorraine Finnegan. You're saying that the worst offending drivers, you would want them to be purged from the system. But for other drivers who would be assessed on a case-by-case basis, you would want the state to grant them some amnesty.
Yes, I would recommend that.
I hear you on that. Well, let's hear from the Transport Minister himself, Daryl Vaz. He sent this statement, this video statement earlier today.
One outstanding issue remains, and that will be dealt specifically at another meeting to be convened in the coming week. And of course, of particular interest is how to address the issue of persons who have already reached the threshold of demerit points for suspension of license up to the point of the review. That matter also will be referred to the ministry and a decision taken at a cabinet level.
That's the Transport Minister, Daryl Vaz. Ralston Smith, you have the difficult job of trying to balance the interests of stakeholders, and I know they're calling themselves investors, and they are investors, the bus and taxi operators. They are investors legitimately, and putting respect on their names and titles. But you also have a public that there's no love lost from the public where the transport operators are concerned, because we know everybody has 15 stories about how bus and taxi operators drive on the nation's streets. They are depending on you to enforce regulations set by legislators that protects motorists on the streets from the wild west of bus and taxi operating. So when you hear Lorraine Finnegan say, boy, for some of them, you know, who have the 10 and 14 and the 16 points and the 20 points, wipe the slate clean, what will you tell the public?
Well, there are a number of permutations to consider. And you would know, George, by virtue of your own training, that laws are intended to correct a particular mischief.
Yes.
And what is it that the regulators, the legislations are seeking to correct is the whole attitude and behavior of drivers on our roads. Mm-hmm. To that extent, the issue of the individuals, the operators out there with demerit points that would escalate to the suspension and possible revocation of their driver's license is a conversation that we need to have, and I think Lorraine Finnegan put it into context by saying one of the things we have to do is to look at some of these infractions that the operators would have committed. The attitude and the behavior of the drivers are of critical importance, and again, I would want to sit here and to commit to a particular position, but to say that I'd want to benefit from a fulsome discourse on this particular matter, taking into account the experience of the enforcers out there, the police, and the kind of records that they have on the drivers that are out there, as well as the investors, as you put them, or stakeholders, yes, the operating public at large. But it's a matter that we must confront. We must
head on, yes,
and treat it going forward. And at the end of the day, a difficult decision will have to be made.
Has to be taken, because the public is crying out for someone to stand up for us, to protect us on the roads from taxi operators that appear to be mad on the best of days. This is Lead Story here on CVM TV. We'll pick up the conversation after these.
death. Obey the road code.
A message from the Road Safety Unit in the Island Traffic Authority.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
On pass over for now. Bus and taxi operators, part of the Transport Stakeholders Group, the steering committee, they met with government officials earlier on Tuesday to iron out the issues concerning the regulations that support the Road Traffic Act. And the vibe coming out of the meeting, the report coming out of the meeting, is that all stakeholders gathered are satisfied with the discussions. It was a long meeting, wide-ranging, perhaps even painstaking in parts as they went through various provisions of the law, and they've made a set of recommendations which we are being told all stakeholders present agreed on, and they've sent those forward to the Minister of Transport, Daryl Vaz, to see how those recommendations will reflect in new regulations to support the Road Traffic Act. Jamaicans are angry because they've said that, look, motorists on the road drive badly themselves, but taxi and bus operators are on a totally different level, in a different universe, and the way they use the roads traditionally, even a blind man could see, even Nige boy could see that these tough regulations are put in to curb the behavior of these bus and taxi operators who are rampant on the nation's streets. That said, there are enough sober heads among the transport operators, the investors, who've been saying to their members, we need to do better, and they're not biased. For instance, Lorraine Oscar Finnegan, All Ireland Taxi Association, saying that he believes that those who are the worst in terms of infractions ought to be purged from the system, even as he wants others who have demerit points against their name, which would warrant the suspension of their license, that those people be given a second chance. So here I go now, Ralston Smith, the issue of the rules against the taxi operators, because Lorraine Finnegan has been making the excellent point, not just this week, but for some time now, that the way especially town centers are designed and the layout and that dreaded yellow paint that is on the curb of the sidewalks, which indicates, of course, that you can't sit down or pick up passengers from there. The rules in the town centers are designed to punish taxi and bus operators, and he's saying that in real terms you cannot but break the rules if you are in the transport business. And I'm asking you, from the perspective of the Transport Authority, why is this so?
All right, first, let me put it into perspective. The painting of curb wall yellow by its very nature does not constitute any road traffic sign per se, and those markings must be augmented, supported by no parking, no stopping sign. So insofar as there is no designation of a no stopping, no parking sign, that's merely decoration. And those are some of the things that we would have discussed at the steering committee level, with the support, of course, from the National Works Agency, PSTEP itself, and of course the Island Traffic Authority. So those points have been made. Another issue for the operators is, especially the taxi operators, they were complaining about their not being able to stop at bus stops. And that point has been debunked by ACP Gary McKenzie, insofar as what he's actually saying is that taxis are allowed to stop there, and we agree in full that taxi operators should be allowed to stop.
But that's news to me. I always thought that taxis were barred from stopping at bus stops.
One of the things we want to do is to ensure that the designation of bus stop is removed, and we call them, for example, PPV stops.
Yes.
And you disbar now private motorists from stopping at those stops.
Oh, so that's something that was recommended today?
That is something that is on the table in terms of the designation, yes, of the bus stops being PPV stops. Yes. That's on the table. But insofar as the practice goes, is to allow for all PPV vehicles to stop at the bus stops.
Well, the entity that you lead, plus the Island Traffic Authority and the other government agencies, what they create in town centers it puts the police in line to be enemies with the taxi operators, because of course they have to enforce the rules and enforce the laws. And what not just Finnegan but several taxi association bosses have said, we have nowhere to park in town centers, we have nowhere to sit down, pick up, as I've said, the yellow markings is just one aspect of it. And how are you going to operate without breaking the law? And I've said to myself, why are the authorities not addressing this? Because it's not as if these taxi operators are telling a lie about the inadequacy, especially of town centers, to accommodate bus and taxi operators?
All right, so several recommendations have been advanced to address a myriad of issues, to include the points you just made. Among them is looking at the infrastructure. There's no denying that there's inadequate infrastructure in some spaces, and that we need to look at some of our transportation centers with a view to improving them. Our minister is sufficiently seized of that issue. As a matter of fact, he has put a task force together to look at a recommendation that the steering committee presented to him in respect of the state of the transportation centers across the country. And what he's actually looking at now is to work with the Ministry of Local Government in concert with National Works Agency to work out some arrangement to see how these facilities can be improved, upgraded, etc. And those are just among the plethora of plans that have emanated from the steering committee that the minister has put together, of which I am appointed chairperson.
Mr. Finnegan, so today I'm sure you would have heard several things to address the points I just raised with Mr. Smith. May I ask you, based on your experience, which town or which town center in Jamaica is best equipped at present to accommodate bus and taxi operators operating within the bounds of the law?
I think I would know. I wouldn't have information on all the town centers, but those that I have full knowledge of, the transportation center in St. James in Montego Bay would have a more better equipped features than all the others that I've looked at.
And Halfway Tree is not designed for bus and taxi operators, eh?
Well, you have the transportation center.
No, man, forget the JUTC. Forget that one.
Well, no, it is not equipped. There's no designated proper places that has been built.
And I'm seeing shots now. I'm seeing shots now, Mr. Finnegan, of North Odeon Avenue. My producer has plugged them in for me, and it's still an informal arrangement where your members are forced to take over people's gas stations, park on the sidewalk, and just be unruly. And then the police come and ticket them for breaking the laws, but you have nowhere to go.
But I must let you know, since the appointment of the present MD,
yes,
I have been meeting with him from January of this year. And all long before, not this year, January of 2023, long before steering committee. And parking was always on his priority list for the entire island. And at one of the meetings we had, he said, Mr. Finnegan, I'm starting with Halfway Tree, then downtown Kingston, and we take it from there. So it has been on his priority list. The problem that we face is to get lands that are available, which is hard to get within the KMTR. And two is, he had a meeting with us last year, trying to look at how well he could take the buses off the streets of Halfway Tree and put them into the transportation center. And this is all the buses. And also to put some of the taxis in them, and to look at how much could hold in the Spencer James Park. And I am pleased also to announce that since December of last year, the MD has made inward steps as it relates to the Spencer James Park. The last information we got at steering committee meeting is that the plan to rearrange Spencer James Park is in far advanced stage of readiness. So parking is priority on his list, but when you look at how the KMTR itself is designed with commercial activities, roadways, it is a difficult task for the MD and in particular and for the steering committee in general.
Here's the thing for me now, Mr. Finnegan, because I couldn't have you here without putting this squarely to you. And I know this is the painful part of the discussion about public transport. The public has this perception that taxi and bus operators believe that the road belongs to them. They pay more insurance than everybody else. They pay more fitness, higher registration fees. They have a God-given right to the road. And as we saw on Monday, despite your best pleadings, it is difficult for people in your position to control and to shape the behavior of your members. And so in light of that, and for how badly taxi operators use the roads habitually and bus drivers. Why should the public be sympathetic about a punishment regime they believe is finally designed with the teeth to influence the kind of positive road use that will make the country a better place?
I can't give you any reason or reasons why the public should be sympathetic with the operators within the public transportation sector, because the behavioral pattern on the road, the dress code, is out there to be seen by the public, and it is not something that even myself as a leader is comfortable with. However, it is also proven that it is the minority of our operators out there that is causing the problem. The better portion of the operators and investors within this sector are really law-abiding and decent drivers. If you look at some of our members' outstanding ticket printout, 90% of the tickets that they got are offenses when the vehicle is not moving. But because of how the minority drives and the way the minority behaves, then it gives a bad impression that it is the entire sector is indisciplined and is out of order and is menace to the society, some of the words that are used to describe them.
Yeah.
But we have quite a vast number within the sector that are really good drivers out there.
Hear you on that.
There's a particular town center in Jamaica, you see?
Yes.
Where there is no parking. So in that town center, all the taxis and bus occupy a side of different parts of road. And if you should go into that town center, you will see up to 20 taxis line parked neatly on the left side of the road. And those 20 would have held to load, because the gas station across 3 would be loading over there. The fire hydrant on the other side, another 3 would be loading over there. 2 would be loading across from a particular supermarket. But when you look, there are 20 lined up and waiting on the upper